You are paying for a ghost town, and you don't even know it. Right now, a silent multi-billion-dollar migration is stripping the wealth out of America's most iconic states. California, Illinois, and New York are bleeding their biggest taxpayers, and the politicians are letting it happen. But this isn't just about billionaires buying mega mansions in Florida. It's an engineered economic death spiral that directly targets the middle class. When the ultra-rich pack up and leave, the infrastructure still needs funding and the massive, looming bill. It is being handed straight to you. Here's exactly how it's happening. The tipping point of taxation. Why are the ultra-wealthy suddenly fleeing now, when high-tax states have always demanded a premium from their highest earners? For decades, residents of places like Manhattan and San Francisco accepted astronomical state taxes as a necessary, almost justifiable civic duty. The unspoken price of admission for access to the world's most lucrative financial and technological ecosystems. But a profound psychological breaking point has been reached. In recent years, relentless and aggressive legislative tax hikes have fundamentally altered the narrative. To the financial elite, these compounding levies no longer feel like a contribution to public infrastructure. They are perceived as a punitive penalty on sheer economic success. Simultaneously, a structural revolution in global commerce has shattered the geographic monopolies of America's legacy cities. The great decoupling of wealth and geography means that modern capital is flawlessly liquid. A hedge fund manager or tech titan no longer needs a physical headquarters on Wall Street or Sand Hill Road to thrive. As remote infrastructure and digital banking dissolve borders, the realization is set in that staying in a high-tax jurisdiction is entirely voluntary. This realization exposes a terrifying concentration risk for these local governments. State budgets are built on a dangerously fragile foundation. Recent data from a 2025 Smart Asset Economics study reveals that in New York, a mere 91,840 households, representing the top 1% of earners, contribute an astonishing 46.2% of the state's total income tax revenue, roughly $79.5 billion annually. In California, the dependency is just as alarming, with the top 1% footing the bill for nearly 39% of the state's total income tax collections, amounting to over $122 billion. These state governments have centralized their financial survival on a microscopic fraction of their populations. But leaving isn't just a matter of packing bags. It's a calculated financial offensive, and the states they are fleeing have walked right into a trap. The illusion of the billionaire tax. If progressive states are taxing the rich more heavily than ever before, why are their actual tax revenues shrinking at an alarming rate? The answer lies in the harsh, unavoidable mathematical reality of the Laffer curve. This economic principle dictates that there is a definitive threshold where raising tax rates stops generating additional revenue and instead incentivizes widespread tax avoidance and capital flight. Legacy states have breached this threshold, and their aggressive legislative push for higher marginal rates has triggered a catastrophic backfire. The country is now witnessing the era of the one-man deficit. When a state's budget relies entirely on a handful of mega earners, the departure of a single individual can blow an instantaneous, nine-figure hole in an annual fiscal projection. When billionaire investor Ken Griffin relocated his massive hedge fund, Citadel, from Chicago to Miami in 2022, citing high crime and crippling taxes, he didn't just take his personal income. He ripped an estimated $10 billion enterprise and thousands of high-paying jobs out of the Illinois tax base in a single maneuver. Similarly, when Titan Carl Icahn abandoned New York for the tax haven of Florida, or when Elon Musk shifted his sprawling corporate empire from California to Texas, they proved that state legislatures possess absolutely zero leverage over highly liquid billionaires. Politicians frequently float the populist concept of aggressive wealth taxes to combat this outflow, but these policies continually fail on arrival. By attempting to target static net worth rather than liquid, realized income, governments inadvertently force the ultra-wealthy to liquidate vast portfolios, trigger massive capital gains, and officially move their primary legal residences to tax havens to protect their life's work and shareholder value. Politicians thought they could trap this wealth, but they forgot one crucial detail about modern money, and it's tearing local economies apart. The domino effect on Main Street. How does a billionaire quietly relocating to a sprawling estate in Miami financially devastate a middle-class family trying to survive in Chicago? The destruction travels through the economic ecosystem like a shockwave, beginning with complete and devastating evaporation of the secondary economy. Ultra-wealthy residents do not exist in a financial vacuum. They function as the essential lifeblood for an expansive network of local businesses. When the elite pack up their capital, the localized luxury service sector rapidly collapses. High-end restaurant groups, elite private schools, specialized legal firms, and local contractors who rely heavily on lucrative, premium spending suddenly find their client base vanishing overnight, leading to rampant layoffs among working-class staff. But the devastation does not end with individual consumer spending. The flight of the ultra-rich inevitably triggers a massive corporate exodus. When chief executives officially change their residency to a zero-income tax state, it is only a matter of time before corporate headquarters follow suit. A single signature on a relocation document can wipe out thousands of white-collar and working-class support jobs, fundamentally gutting a city's commercial district and leaving massive commercial skyscrapers entirely vacant. Furthermore, this mass departure creates a terrifying real estate void. As the departing elite dump their luxury mansions and penthouses onto a saturated market, supply drastically outweighs demand. This forces significant price reductions at the top of the housing market, which systematically drags down overall property valuations in the surrounding affluent neighborhoods. Because local municipalities rely heavily on property values to fund immediate civic services, this sudden drop in valuations heavily reduces annual property tax collections. With the corporate tax base evaporating, states are panicking, and their solution to this crisis? It's practically a declaration of war against their own remaining citizens. The Sun Belt's aggressive poaching strategy. How are states like Texas and Florida weaponizing their tax codes to actively steal legacy wealth from under the noses of northern governors? The answer is a highly coordinated, state-sponsored financial insurgency centered around the ultimate economic lure: the zero-income tax weapon. The American Sun Belt has aggressively rebranded itself, intentionally marketing its jurisdictions as impenetrable financial sanctuaries for besieged corporations and wealthy families. State economic development boards have completely transformed into aggressive corporate headhunters. They do not idly wait for chief executives to grow frustrated with high taxes. They actively court out-of-state business leaders in closed-door meetings, offering massive, highly confidential incentive packages, heavily subsidized land deals, and regulatory fast-tracks that financially strained legacy states simply cannot match. The mathematical results of this campaign are undeniable. The latest Internal Revenue Service migration data for the 2022 to 2023 tax period reveals a staggering redistribution of American wealth. Texas gained over 56,000 net income tax filers, and Florida absorbed an additional 55,000. In stark contrast, California hemorrhaged over 100,000 tax-paying households, while New York lost nearly 72,000. However, the economic utopia of the Sun Belt conceals a dark, hidden cost. These cheap states mathematically must fund their expanding infrastructure somehow, and they do so by quietly shifting the burden away from income and onto localized consumption and property. Texas and Florida fund their operations through exceptionally high property tax rates and aggressive local sales taxes. This creates a deeply regressive system that rolls out the red carpet for arriving billionaires, while quietly and disproportionately burdening their own native, lower-income residents who must spend a significantly larger percentage of their total income on basic survival. These Sunbelt states are winning the wealth war. But back up north, the loss of this revenue triggers a terrifying mechanical failure in state governments. The death spiral of public services. What exactly happens to a metropolis when it goes mathematically broke, but is legally bound and never stops spending? The city enters a suffocating economic death spiral driven by the catastrophic crisis of unfunded liabilities. Legacy states are shackled to antiquated, ironclad contracts promising billions in public sector pensions to retired government workers, teachers, and police officers. These legal obligations must be paid out in full regardless of how severely the state's tax revenue collapses. According to the state of Illinois' own 2025 biennial report from the Department of Insurance, The state is drowning under an unfathomable $218 billion in unfunded pension liabilities across its government plans. Their funding ratio sits at a terrifying 49%, meaning the government literally only possesses 49 cents for every dollar it has promised to pay out. Financial analysts note that even if Illinois magically generated an extra $1 million a day strictly for pensions, it would take roughly 6 centuries to fill the current financial crater. When states are forced to funnel their remaining, shrinking revenues into legally mandated pension payouts, discretionary spending completely evaporates, accelerating immediate infrastructure decay. Citizens watch their reality crumble in real time as state governments brutally slash municipal maintenance budgets. Roads turn to treacherous, pothole-riddled hazards. Aging municipal power grids fail during extreme weather events. Public transportation systems default to hazardous states of disrepair, and critical emergency medical and police response times are fatally delayed. To temporarily mask the systemic collapse, desperate municipalities fall into the municipal bond trap. They begin borrowing billions from Wall Street at predatory rates, simply to cover basic daily operating costs. This irresponsible debt accumulation triggers catastrophic credit rating downgrades, ensuring the city is paralyzed by crippling interest payments for generations. The math no longer works. The money is gone, but the debt remains. So, who does the government come after next? The answer is sitting in your driveway. The final squeeze on the middle class. How is the middle class structurally trapped into paying the exorbitant bill for the elite's exit? When the ultra-wealthy take their capital across state lines and the corporate tax base disintegrates, the government cannot simply declare bankruptcy and close its doors. Instead, states initiate a desperate and ruthless pivot to captive revenue. To replace the billions lost in income taxes, legislatures turn their crosshairs on the assets they can physically trap within their borders. They aggressively hike local property taxes, dramatically inflate vehicle registration fees, mandate costly environmental utility surcharges, and increase local sales taxes on everyday retail goods. These are aggressive, inescapable consumption taxes designed to extract capital directly from the working public. The middle class quickly finds itself paralyzed by a devastating mobility trap. Unlike liquid billionaires who can instantly shift their legal residency with a brief phone call to their wealth manager, the average citizen is tethered to a sinking ship. They are anchored by localized, in-person jobs, heavily invested in community and family roots, and trapped by underwater mortgages or soaring national interest rates that make selling their home and relocating to a cheaper state mathematically impossible. The ultimate, horrifying realization is that the grand political promise of the past decade has completely inverted. The state tax system has fundamentally shifted away from penalizing the ultra-rich, who have already legally insulated themselves or permanently fled the jurisdiction. Instead, the crushing weight of funding bloated, failing state governments has been purposefully dropped onto the demographic that is entirely captive. The everyday citizens who are too poor to easily flee, but too rich to qualify for government assistance. The great wealth exodus isn't just a geographic relocation. It is the most aggressive, silent transfer of tax burden in modern history, and you are the one left holding the bag. A collapsing system will always find a way to survive, even if it means financially burying the citizens who chose to stay.